Welcome to the WPL Book Drop Podcast. I'm your host, Becky Miller, Circulation and Marketing Assistant at Waterloo Public Library. I am so excited to welcome two great guests today for their first visit on the podcast. Joining us today is Haley, Library Assistant at Waterloo Public Library. Haley is a retired high school violinist, a lover of any type of pasta, and currently planning the biggest party she's ever planned, her wedding. Welcome, Haley.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. You're getting married. Can you tell us when you're getting married?
I'm getting married next September, so I still have plenty of time to plan, thank goodness, because I'm not a good planner at all.
There's a lot of work that goes into planning a wedding.
There's so much work. Yes. It's wonderful and fun, but very stressful.
It is indeed. Mm-hmm. Happy times.
Thank you.
Joining us today is Seth, Library Assistant at Waterloo Public Library. Seth is currently working on a short collection of poems about Tetris, Monster Energy drinks, and the band Korn. Since the age of 23, Seth has made it a point to listen to the Donkey Kong rap first thing in the morning on his birthday every year. And for a not insubstantial period of his childhood, he believed there was also a Mississippi River.
It's true. It's true.
Welcome, Seth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we have to dig into this a little bit. Why did you think there was a Mississippi River?
The patriarchy. No, I don't know. I grew up on the Mississippi River, so I think I heard it every day, and I heard the word Mrs. very often because it's a common word, I suppose. And my brain could not hold more than two ideas in its head at the time.
So you deduced that there must be a Mississippi River as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That explains that. But we also have to ask about the Donkey Kong rap. How did that start?
So there's a couple of reasons. The first time was happenstance. I think we had for my 23rd birthday, we did morning cartoons, and I happened to watch. People might not be aware of this because it's kind of been memory hold, but there was a very bad CG Donkey Kong cartoon in the late 90s or so that I was a big fan of. We happened to watch that, and I heard the Donkey Kong rap. The next year, I don't know why, I decided to listen to it again, but something made me think of Donkey Kong, which is not an uncommon occurrence for me. And now it's kind of like you know the Linklater movie Boyhood, where like they filmed a year of his life. I take some notes on the Donkey Kong rap every year, so when I'm like 60, if I'm lucky enough to live to that age, I can look back on 37 years of notes on the Donkey Kong rap and see how my perception has changed.
Oh my gosh. That is awesome.
Thank you.
We will put a link to the Donkey Kong rap in the episode description for folks that are curious about that.
Yes.
Okay, so Haley, this is the first time you're joining the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Waterloo Public Library?
So I work mostly in the circulation department. So I help check out books, I help return books, I help patrons find things they're looking for, all that fun stuff. But most recently, I have joined the marketing department, which has been really fun. I've been working mostly with social media, that kind of thing. So it's been really fun to learn that aspect of working at the library.
Mm-hmm. And Seth, what do you do here at the library?
So I'm also a library assistant. I go back and forth between the circulation department and the reference department. More reference as of late. So if there is anything you need to know that you would like the library to research, I might be the one to help you. So if you want the oral history of the Donkey Kong rap, I can help you with that at the library. But more recently, I have gotten a little bit more involved with programming, such as the upcoming reading series in April.
All right. Well, you just kind of brought it up. The reason that we have you both on the podcast today is to talk about that poetry series that you're planning. So, Haley, what can you tell us about that?
So it's a 4-weekend poetry event. We've invited 3 guest speakers, all of whom we had as professors at the University of Northern Iowa or worked with them at the North American Review. They're all local Cedar Valley poets, which is really cool. So we thought that they'd be great for National Poetry Month. So the first 3 weekends, we have one of our speakers coming in, reading some of their work, having kind of like a Q&A at the end, giving patrons some prompts to work on on their own. And then the last weekend of April will be the community open mic event. And so we're inviting all people from the Cedar Valley area to come back and read some of their poems that they wrote. So the dates for those are April 9th, they're all Saturdays. Saturday, April 9th, Saturday, April 16th, Saturday, April 23rd, and Saturday, April 30th. And they're all in the meeting room AB from 10 to 11 a.m.
Okay. And who are your guest poets?
Right, so Rachel Morgan, she is an editor and a professor at UNI. She'll be the first guest speaker for the first weekend. The next weekend is Jeremy Schraffenberger, who is also an editor and professor at UNI. And then our last guest speaker is Vince Gotera, who is also a professor at UNI.
Okay. So, Seth, I have to ask you, how did you come up with the idea, the two of you, to work on this series?
Yeah, so I believe Haley first had the idea to invite one of our guest speakers. I think it started, I won't say which one because I don't know if that seems like we're...
Don't pick a favorite.
Want them to know that we had one in mind first. But yeah, Haley came to me and asked if I'd like to be involved with that. And I did. So we kind of talked about other people we knew at UNI. We both were in the creative writing department at UNI and got the pleasure of working with all of these great people, including the ones coming to speak, and others, of course, who will come next year, maybe. But my first thought went to kind of these 2 other professors I know who are very, very talented poets in their own right, who I know are very involved in their community and I thought would like to do something like this. So we kind of went from there. As Haley mentioned, she has experience at the North American Review, which is the literary magazine held on campus at UNI. I also do have some history there. So those were things that we kind of did a lot at that literary magazine, was have these kind of reading events. So we definitely kind of pulled from our experience there and what we were looking for something that was geared towards this particular community. And I think we have a lot of really great stuff on deck for that.
Yeah, and you have a little bit of experience doing some writing of your own. You're a poet.
I am a poet. I have my master's is in creative writing. My master's thesis was poems and short stories and creative nonfiction essays. And I've been doing that for a little while. I've been trying to publish the last decade or so. So yeah.
Cool. One of the things that Haley mentioned in the series is the last weekend. Yes. Can you talk about that final event?
Yeah. So we definitely wanted to have something that really got the entire community involved, not just as audience participants, but something that was felt like it was the community's event to celebrate all of the talent that we have in Waterloo, which there's a ton. There's a rich history of literature and poetry and all of that good stuff here. There's lots of great people doing amazing things in the Waterloo area, and like the Waterloo Writing Project, for example. There's so much talent there, and probably so many other people that I think giving them kind of the chance, giving them the platform to kind of read their work to a larger audience. That's something that I think is really important for people kind of trying to find their footing in in any creative world in general, but particularly in this case, kind of that world of poetry and literature.
So if people are interested, they can come to any of the events that are happening in April on those weekends. That's the Saturdays at 10 a.m. in April to see the poets, and then that final weekend in April, they can come and read their poetry, whatever they have that they want to try sharing before an audience. So we encourage that. So before we wrap up, let's take some time to spotlight some books you've each read recently. What can you recommend for our listeners? We'll start with you, Haley.
So the first book I want to talk about is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. It was a recent book club pick for the Bookaholics book club here. It was the first book that I read when I started here for the book club, and I immediately was interested because of vampires. I love vampires. Always have. It's by Grady Hendrix, who writes a lot of weird, good horror fiction. This one takes place throughout the 80s and 90s in a suburb, and this book club gets together and decides that they want to form their own book club where they can pick the things that they get to read, and they start reading the worst, like, smutty fiction that they can find. And a new man moves to town, and no one knows him. And they're all kind of suspicious about him for a little bit, but it ends up being this one woman who believes that he's a vampire, so she makes it her mission to defeat him so that their community is safe. So it kind of goes through about a decade of time where she's trying to prove that he's a vampire and defeat him. And I'm making it sound a lot more lame, but there's some gore. I don't usually like gore, but there's just enough, and it's suspenseful, and the author does a really good job of just pulling you in and keeping you in till the very end.
So you liked it?
I did like it a lot.
Okay.
There were some weird scenes, but I liked it a lot.
I heard about that book.
Yep.
And then did you have another one that you wanted to share with us?
I did. This one I read just for fun. It's not part of a book club. It's called 1, 2, 3, and it's a relatively new fiction book. It's by Lori Frankel. And this one is all about the power of sisterhood. It's these three twins trying to protect their small town from a nuclear plant that's trying to move there and has in the past destroyed their town. So it's all about the power of sisterhood, the power of friendship, the power of youth, just protecting their community.
Wait, so the power plant was there before?
Yeah, it was there before, and then they left because they destroyed the town, kind of, and poisoned the river.
Weird, that
And
would never happen.
I know, it's definitely not based on reality. And they get permission to come back, and so it's all about the sisters trying to protect their town from them coming back.
As one would.
Yes.
All right, and then Seth, what did you want to talk about today?
All right, so the first book I have was Tacky by Rex King. It's a collection of essays about their memoir essays, kind of about the author's kind of personal relationship with things in kind of popular culture that maybe are often seen as maybe like low culture type things, or things that are kind of the common kind of punching bag in culture. For example, there is a really excellent essay about the band Creed, who I won't place a moral judgment or a quality judgment either way, but has, I think, been subject to ridicule after their heyday. But it's also a very strange essay that will make you cry, and it's all centered around, well, the launching point is the author's love for a couple of Creed songs. So it's a really fun one. It kind of draws out a lot of pathos in places where you don't really expect it. There's not an essay on Monster Energy drinks, but there could be, I think.
That's fun.
And then the second one that I read most recently was, it's a long title, so I'm hoping I don't. It's If This Is the Age We End Discovery. I think I got all the articles in that title right. It's by Rosebud Ben-Oni, and it's a really interesting poetry collection. Rosebud Ben-Oni is not only a poet, but she studies various sciences, particularly physics. So this is a poetry collection that works in a lot of discussion of, like, there's a series of poems on string theory and just other theories within physics. And as you might tell, I don't know anything about science or physics. Physics was my worst grade in college. But I still very much enjoyed this book. I think it's a very interesting perspective that is very accessible, that makes the science side of things accessible and ties it, again, kind of brings out, like the other, like Tacky, kind of brings out pathos in ways I wouldn't have necessarily expected. And again, makes all of the, like, physics talk and science talk in it very accessible. And also the poetry side of things is very accessible because, you know, poetry, I think, can often be intimidating to people. But I think on all fronts, this collection does a really great job of drawing emotion out of things that, again, we might not expect to feel emotions about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the only emotion I feel when I think about physics is maybe avoidance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it must be really good poetry.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, you know what? I want to say thank you both, Seth and Haley, for coming on the podcast today. It's really been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great to be here.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to leave a rating and subscribe. Thank you.